Thank you for joining us today, everybody. We welcome you. My name is Jonathan Penn. Joining me today is Jonathan McCarty. Jonathan McCarty is a certified financial planner, a chartered financial analyst, also holds the National Social Security Advisor designation. So Jonathan, thank you very much for being here.
Thanks, John.
We're going to talk about a topic today that Jonathan and I speak with a lot of folks about, especially when it comes to couples planning. We're going to talk a little bit about today, not just about Social Security, but what do you need to think about when it comes to Social Security planning for couples? I don't know about you, Jonathan, but this seems to be a topic that we discuss with a lot of our clients, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it really is a cornerstone of financial planning. You know, the biggest part of what we do is forecasting how viable your plan is for retirement, and a huge component of that is going to be the income that you're drawing from Social Security and how much that complements your other sources of income.
So before we dive into some of the specifics today around Social Security planning and specifically Social Security planning for couples, just a few housekeeping items. So we are Clarity Financial, doing business as RIA advisors. We are registered with the Securities Exchange Commission. We are also fiduciaries. Today, Jonathan and I really want this conversation to be very educational and very informative. Just know when it comes to Social Security planning, especially for couples, that Social Security planning is not a one-size-fits-all. It's different and it's unique for everybody. So today we're going to get into some information, not necessarily any sort of specific recommendations. We are going to go over some different claiming illustrations, but just know that this can be different for everybody. But before we dive into some of the specifics and review those specific Social Security illustrations, Jonathan, probably a good idea to kind of lay some groundwork around just what is Social Security. Maybe we can cover some of the basics and get into some of the definitions first.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, John. So first we'll start with a little bit of history about Social Security itself. So for those of you who aren't already aware, Social Security was signed into law back in 1935 by President FDR, and it was essentially established to provide a basic level of income for individuals who have retired and worked all of their adult lives. Now in 1939, they added in surviving spouse benefits, spousal benefits for alive spouses, and also for minor children. Now, you keep in mind, back in those days, the spouses, typically women, did not often work. It was a single income household. So the spousal benefit was created to recognize the wife's contribution to the household in raising the kids and managing the day-to-days. And then they also added survivor benefits in the event that your working spouse passed away before beginning to claim Social Security, and you would be able to then draw upon that individual's spousal record. Now, you also have the addition of minor children benefits for individuals who had minor children if they were to pass away prior to reaching full retirement age. Now, the original designers of Social Security probably did not have this in mind, but those minor children benefits also apply for individuals who are already claiming Social Security. So if you happen to be one of those individuals that has children later in life and you find yourself at the ripe old age of 67 and claiming benefits while still having minor children, those children will also qualify for benefits themselves until they reach age 18. Now, the main premise behind Social Security is that it serves as retirement benefits that you cannot outlive. Now, obviously, the longer that you live, the more you're going to draw from the system. As you can see from the slide behind me, if you were to begin claiming Social Security benefits and your benefit amount was $2,000 and you lived for an additional 10 years, you would draw about $250,000 out of the system. If you lived for 20 more years, you draw a little over $580,000, and if you lived for 30 more years, you draw almost $1 million out of the Social Security system. Now, of course, this illustration is assuming a 2% cost of living adjustment, or COLA. You may be asking yourself, what is a cost of living adjustment, or COLA? It is specifically the income adjustment made in relation to inflation. It is tied to CPI, so your benefits will increase each year based off of the inflation in the overall economy. Now, there's no way to predict what that's going to be, so for illustration purposes, in this presentation, we have assumed a 2% cost of living adjustment, or COLA. Now, to illustrate how that will impact your payments over time, if you start with a $2,000 PIA, or primary insurance amount, and you have 10 years in the system, that will inflate to about $2,438. If you have 20 years in the system, your benefit will rise to $2,972. And if you make it 30 years, you'll be looking at roughly $3,600 in benefits. Now, that is what will be based off of your primary insurance amount. Now, let's get into a couple of those definitions before we continue. So your full retirement age, you're going to hear us reference this often in the course of this presentation. That is the full retirement age at which you can receive 100% of your primary insurance amount benefits. Now that does change depending on what year you were born in. Now when Social Security was first enacted, the full retirement age was 65, in line with Medicare. In the early 80s, Congress made adjustments to the program that gradually phased in an increase in full retirement age from 66 for individuals that are born before 1954 to 67 for individuals born after 1960. And you can see that gradual phase in here in the slide behind me. Now, as I said, that determines what your PIA is, or primary insurance amount. That is going to be the amount that you receive based on your own work record. Now the calculation for determining this is a little bit complex, but basically put, it is the highest 35 years of earnings that you have achieved during your working life. Now for earlier years of your working life, those earnings are indexed up for inflation up until age 60. After that, after age 60, you will just be getting whatever the income is for that given year. Now you may be asking yourself, is it possible to increase my PIA after claiming Social Security? And in fact, it is. So if you're looking to increase your PIA amount, your primary insurance amount, you may continue working beyond full retirement age, even if you are already drawing upon Social Security. This will increase your PIA each year you've worked that is a higher income level than any of your previous 35 highest earning years. Now I'm going to turn it over to John. He's going to talk about some of the impacts that come to your PIA by claiming either early or late.
So just a few moments ago, Jonathan was talking about full retirement age and the significance of that. So what if you apply for your Social Security benefit before you reach your full retirement age? Or another way to think about it is, what if you apply for your Social Security benefit early? Well, if you apply early, and the earliest age that you can apply for your Social Security is at age 62. So if you apply at age 62, you will still receive a benefit, but as we indicate here, you're not going to receive that full benefit that you would receive at your full retirement age, that primary insurance amount that Jonathan was just talking about. The benefit that you'll receive if you take your Social Security early, let's say at age 62, that benefit's going to be reduced. And if you take your Social Security early, let's say anywhere from age 62 up until your full retirement age, that benefit that you receive, that reduction, that's a permanent reduction. So if you claim early before your full retirement age, that is a permanent reduction in your benefit, and that will last for your entire lifetime. So if, in this example here, if you were born in, let's say, 1960 or later, your full retirement age is age 67. So if you start claiming your Social Security benefit at age 62, well, in this case, we're not going to receive our primary insurance benefit of $2,400 a month. We're only going to receive 70% of that, or in this example, $1,680. So some reasons not to file before your full retirement age. First and foremost, your benefit will be permanently reduced. Again, that's a permanent reduction in your benefit. Now, if you work, if you have earned income, so let's say you start filing your Social Security earlier than your full retirement age and you have earned income, there is what is called an annual earnings test when it comes to Social Security if you take it before your full retirement age. Right now in 2024, if you work and have earned income, $1 in your benefits will be withheld for every $2 that you earn over $22,320 a year, okay? Something else you really need to think about too when it comes to taking your Social Security early is that the benefit that your surviving spouse would receive would also be lower. So if I take my Social Security benefit early, so I was born after 1960, so my full retirement age is 67. Let's say I take my benefit early at 62, 63, 64, well, that benefit that I receive is going to be permanently reduced. If I predecease my spouse, well then my spouse's survivor's benefit also can be potentially lower since I claimed my Social Security benefit early. You'll find as Jonathan and I go through this conversation today that when it comes to thinking about claiming strategies for Social Security as a couple, it's not always just about you. You have to think about this from the standpoint of a couple and what makes sense. That's if you start taking your Social Security early, before your full retirement age. What if you apply after your full retirement age? Well, once you reach your full retirement age, for every year that you delay the receipt of taking your Social Security, you get what is called a delayed retirement credit. So for every year, once you hit your full retirement age, for every year that you delay the receipt of your Social Security, you receive an 8% increase in that benefit. So in this example, our full retirement age is 66. So at age 66, my primary insurance amount would be $2,400 a month. But so let's say I don't start claiming until age 70. Well, you can see by age 70, I've delayed the receipt of my Social Security by 4 years, an 8% increase times 4, that's my benefit at age 70 is 32% greater, so I'm no longer receiving $2,400 a month, now I'm receiving $3,168. That's a very significant difference, and just as Jonathan will talk a little bit more about here in a little bit, you'll see how that can dramatically influence the benefit of your surviving spouse. Now, in this particular example, we're looking at an individual whose full retirement age is 67. I would fall into that category because I was born after 1960. So here at age 67, which would be my full retirement age, again, the same benefit, my primary insurance amount of $2,400 a month. But here, if I delay the receipt of my Social Security to age 70, well, now I've delayed it by 3 years. So now my benefit at age 70 is 24% greater, or I'm going to receive $2,976 a month instead of the $2,400 that I would receive at my full retirement age. So in here, you can see the impact of that cumulative amount. If I decide to delay the receipt of my benefits, in this particular slide, we're making the assumption that full retirement age is age 67. My primary insurance amount at age 67 will be that same $2,400 a month. Well, if I take my Social Security early at 62, remember, I'm only going to receive 70% of that amount, or $1,680 for the month. So by the time I get out to age 85, looking at monthly income with that 2% annual cost of living adjustment that Jonathan was talking about earlier, well, by the time I reach age 85, my cumulative benefits now total $638,082. But look at the difference. If I'm able to delay and take my Social Security at age 70, well, now my benefit's 24% greater. So I'm not earning the $2,400 a month anymore. I'm now earning $2,976. And if we run that out to look at those cumulative benefits by the time I'm 85 years young, with those cost of living adjustments, well, now that cumulative amount is much greater. Now you're looking at a figure of over $811,000. And as Jonathan was talking about earlier, kind of in the opening portion of our discussion, that can have a huge impact on the success and your viability of your overall financial plan. Some things to remember when it comes to when you should apply for your Social Security. If you apply early, remember, your benefits will be lower and it stays lower for your life. It's what we call a permanent reduction. And as Jonathan mentioned, COLAs, or cost of living adjustments, they really impact how you want to claim and when you want to really start taking your Social Security, because obviously the longer that you live, the more beneficial it is to delay the receipt of your benefit. And something here that we really want to drive home today, as we spend time with you today, is something to consider. Maybe it makes sense, especially because we're talking about couples planning today with Social Security. It's not uncommon that between a couple, that usually one spouse might be the higher income earner than the other, right? So maybe it's worthwhile to explore for the higher earning spouse to delay the receipt of their benefit later, maybe at age 70 if you can, so that way you can get that maximum benefit at age 70, so that heaven forbid if that higher earning spouse passes away, the surviving spouse receives a larger benefit. So just some things to think about. We'll show some examples here in a little bit where we can actually look at some numbers around this. So talking about spousal benefits here a little bit, I want to turn this back over to Jonathan so we can spend just a little bit more time talking about spousal benefits and how these work, because this is really, really important.
Now, as I mentioned earlier, spousal benefits were originally created to provide for an additional boost to recognize the contributions to the home made by non-working spouses. Now, historically speaking, Traditionally, it was a single income household when this program was created. We've seen a shift in demographics over the last 50 years where we've seen more and more spouses entering the workforce, specifically women. That's had some impact on the way that your spousal benefits will be calculated and the impact to the amount that you're going to receive. So let's talk a little bit about that. Now, first off, the important thing to remember is that the spouse of a worker entitled to benefits may claim a spousal benefit. The key word here being entitled. So just because you qualify to claim benefits, if you are not entitled, meaning you are not currently claiming those benefits, your spouse is not able to receive a spousal benefit. Now let's look at an example of how that would play out. Now we have Jack and Jill here. They are married. Jack's PIA is $2,400. He's worked his entire life. Jill has never worked, but she would be eligible for a spousal benefit based off of Jack's work record. So as you can see here, if Jack files Social Security, she'll get her spousal benefit, and it is 50% of Jack's PIA amount. Now the important thing to remember here is that it is based off of Jack's PIA amount, and that will determine what her spousal benefit is. So the same rules that John just spoke about in relation to filing early also apply to spousal benefits. You are eligible to claim a spousal benefit as early as age 62, again, provided that your spouse is already drawing benefits. You will be subject to a reduction in that benefit amount, very similar to the reduction that John was just speaking about for a primary worker's benefit. Now that can have a lasting impact on the overall income that you'll be drawing from Social Security if you do decide to claim a little bit early. Now, the other thing to consider as well is the shift that I mentioned demographically in the workforce. So we have seen an increase in participation from women in the workforce over the last 50 years. As you can see, back in the early 50s, the participation rate was about 30% of women in the workforce. Fast forward to today, and it's closer to 50%. We've also seen a shift in the number of women who are qualifying for benefits from Social Security on their own work record. So back in the 70s, that was about 63% of women that would qualify for their own Social Security benefit based off of their work history. Now, as of 2019, we've seen about 86% of women qualifying for those benefits. That slightly complicates the spousal benefit option. Now, before we get into the calculation of spousal benefits and how they're impacted by your own work record, let's just quickly review the rules for claiming spousal benefits. So as I mentioned earlier, the primary worker whose benefit you are claiming spousal benefits for must be entitled to benefits. That means they must be currently drawing upon their own benefits. Now, you also must be at least 62 years of age. That is the earliest at which you can claim spousal benefits. Now, survivor benefits can start as early as age 60, but we'll get into that topic a little later in the presentation and talk about how that impacts you. Now, the other thing to remember is that the spousal benefit is based off of the worker's primary insurance amount. So it is not going to be based off of any delayed earning credits. As you will see here, no delayed credits on spousal benefits. So there is no benefit to waiting until you are age 70 to begin claiming your spousal benefits. The only scenario where you may have to do that is if you are the older spouse and the higher earning spouse is younger. You would not want to consider claiming at age 62 for the higher earning spouse just so that you can begin claiming spousal benefits at 67. And that's more in the specifics of your unique situation, which John and I are happy to review with you if that is applicable to you. Also, the marriage requirement is 1 year if you're going to be claiming spousal benefits. Must be married at least 1 year. Now, if you happen to remarry after age 60, then you would still be eligible for the spousal benefits or the survivor benefits from prior to that marriage, even after remarrying at age 60. But we'll talk about that again later as well. So what happens if you are also entitled to benefits on your own work record in addition to the spousal benefit? So first, the spouse will receive their own work record benefit or their own primary insurance amount. After that, they will receive, as long as the spousal benefit would be higher, they will receive a step up in their payment referred to as the spousal boost. So let's take a look at how that would impact a married couple. So Jack and Jill are a couple from earlier. They're back. Jack's PIA, still $2,400, but this time Jill has worked on her own and has accumulated a PIA amount of $800. Now, if Jill elects to claim early at age 62, she would be subject to a reduced amount. Now, that would be factored in for her original PIA and also for her spousal boost. As you can see from the slide here, first, she would see a reduction in her PIA amount that would reduce her $800 PIA to about $560. and then we would use her PIA amount to calculate her spousal boost. So it's not going to be her reduced benefit. You would actually deduct her current PIA from 1/2 of Jack's PIA to determine what she would be eligible for. That would leave her with $400 of eligibility, but that would be further reduced because she claimed early, only leaving her about $260. That would leave roughly a benefit of just over $800. As you can see, versus what she would otherwise be qualified for, that's only about 1/3 of Jack's PIA amount. So it's very important that you consider the long-term implications if you're deciding to claim early. Now let's talk quickly just about a couple of savvy spousal strategies. I'll turn this back over to John. He's going to go over that with us.
So now let's get into some specific illustrations about some different claiming strategies that maybe you can explore as a couple. So we're going to look at three different illustrations here. So illustration 1, what if both couples claim early? Say both couples claim at age 62, right? Option number 2, or illustration number 2, what if both couples delay and take their Social Security at age 70 to try to really maximize those delayed retirement credits that we were talking about earlier? Then let's look at illustration 3, which I like to call is more of a hybrid approach, where maybe one spouse takes their benefit early, let's say maybe at age 62, and the other spouse, maybe the higher income earning spouse, delays and takes Social Security at age 70. So in illustration 3, you've got a little bit of money coming in now, and also trying to marry this with some additional funds coming in later, maybe kind of the best of both worlds. And we'll see how these various illustrations all play out here, right? So in this example, we can see that Joe has a life expectancy of 85, and Jane has a life expectancy of 95. Okay, so about a 10-year difference between their life expectancies. So in this particular example, both Joe and Jane are claiming early at age 62. So you can see from the slide that Joe's benefit, or his primary insurance amount, is $2,400 a month. But he's taking his benefit early at age 62, so he's not going to receive the full $2,400. He's going to receive 70% of that amount, or $1,680. Jane is also going to claim on her record, and because Joe is claiming, Jane can claim on her own record and receive her spousal benefit at age 62 that Jonathan was just mentioning, right? So Jane, her own benefit, which would be $800, well, because she's taking it early at 62, she's only going to receive 70% of that amount. So instead of receiving $800 on her primary insurance amount, Jane's going to receive $560. And as Jonathan was just discussing with her spousal benefit, she would typically receive $400, but because she's claiming early, she's only going to receive 65% of that, or $260. So in this particular example, Jane's total benefit with her own benefit and her spousal benefit is $820. So now let's explore what happens if Joe and Jane delay the receipt of their Social Security benefits and they both delay to age 70. Here, remember, Joe's benefit, or his primary insurance amount, is $2,400 a month. Now, in this particular example, we're making the assumption that Joe's full retirement age is 67 because he delayed to age 70, and now his benefit is 24% greater, where he's going to receive $2,976 a month. Well, Jane, her spousal benefit is going to be half of Joe's PIA. What's important to point out here is this. Joe's benefit, because he delayed the receipt of his Social Security at age 70, well, his benefit increased to $2,976. But as Jonathan was mentioning earlier, Jane is also filing and taking her benefit, but her benefit is not half of what Joe's benefit is at age 70, the $2,976. Jane's benefit is half, or 50%, of Joe's primary insurance amount, and that is why her benefit is $1,200.
So John, what happens if Jane decides to claim early and then Joe decides to claim later?
So let's look at that example. So in this particular example, Jane's going to claim at 62. She's taking her benefit early, right? So rather than receiving the $800 a month, she's going to receive 70% of that, or $560 a month. Now, Joe's going to delay, Jonathan. He's going to take his benefit at age 70. So in this case, his benefit increases from $2,400 a month up to $2,976. Now, when Joe starts claiming on his own record at age 70, and this is one of the points that Jonathan brought up earlier, well, now Jane is entitled to receive her spousal benefit, or that spousal boost that Jonathan was mentioning earlier. So now Jane's total benefit increases to $960 based upon that spousal benefit that she's going to receive. So now let's take a look at this in more of a kind of a graphical form. So this is the first illustration where both Jane and Joe claim early. They're both claiming at age 62. You can see that we've made the assumption that Joe passes at age 85, and in this particular example, that's 2048. So you can really see where Joe's benefit levels off at that point, because now you can see the ramp up in the yellow. That's where Jane starts receiving her survivor benefit. So between the two of them, their total lifetime or their cumulative benefits here is just shy of $1 million. You'll see here in just a little bit, their cumulative benefit is around $930,000. So now let's see what happens, or let's take a look at the graph if they both decide to claim their benefit at age 70. So again, now you can see, again, Joe is, he's passing away at age 85. So you can see his benefit starts leveling out, but then you can see Jane, her survivor's benefit, starts to really increase there. And now, because they both delayed and started receiving their Social Security at age 70, well, now their cumulative lifetime benefits is now greater than $1 million, probably around $1.1 million. And now here's that third illustration that we were looking at, where Jane claims her Social Security benefit early at age 62, gets some income coming in now, and Joe's going to claim later at age 70 to try to maximize that benefit. Now, in this particular graph that we can see that Jane started taking her benefit early at 62, so they have a little bit of money, and then Joe turns on his benefit at age 70. Well, Joe is still going to pass at age 85 years young, and you can really see Jane's survivor benefits start to increase there pretty significantly. What's important to notice here is even with this strategy, where Jane takes her benefit early, that permanent reduction at 62, and Joe delays and takes his benefit at age 70, that their cumulative benefit is pretty close to where they both took their benefit at age 70. So let's see what that difference comes out to. So you can see in the illustration 1, where they both take their Social Security benefit early at age 62, their cumulative benefits over their combined lifespan is a little over $930,000. Well, if they both claim later at age 70, of course, they're getting all those delayed retirement credits and trying to max out their Social Security benefit. Well, now their cumulative benefits are a little bit north of $1.1 million. Well, what's interesting, Jonathan, in the third illustration is when Jane claims early and Joe claims later, they actually squeeze out about an additional $10,000 over their lifetime, right? So sometimes it may not make sense for both spouses in a couple to delay and take the receipt of their Social Security at age 70. So Jonathan, I know you have this conversation quite a bit with folks. Maybe elaborate a little bit on the importance and how the timing of cash flows may come into the consideration on when to file Social Security.
Yeah, that's a great point, John. So, intuitively you may think, well, the best option is clearly to delay as long as we both can and get the maximum benefit possible. But as John just illustrated, it really depends on what the difference in benefit amounts you're going to receive are and the timing of those cash flows. So as we all know, $1 today is worth more than $1 5 years from now. So it's important that we look at your unique situation and what impacts to your health may be considered. The break-even point for each of these is going to be different. And so if you're looking at maybe some family medical history that could potentially impact your longevity in your life, you may want to consider both claiming early. That's where the personalized comprehensive planning that we offer for clients really stands out amongst our competitors and allows us to be much more tactical in recommendations to you.
So here, in looking at these various claiming illustrations or claiming scenarios for a couple, really important slide here that Jonathan and I really want to point out to you is this. So you can see when Joe and Jane both claim early at age 62, because remember, Joe, in this case, we're making the assumption that Joe is the higher income earning spouse. So he locks in his benefit at age 62 and so does Jane. Well, whenever Joe predeceases Jane, well then his benefit at the time is going to become her survivor benefit. So you can see, because they both claimed early, Jane's survivor benefit in this case is $23,760 for the year. But look at scenarios 2 and 3. In both scenarios 2 and 3, Joe takes his Social Security benefit at age 70. He maxes out those delayed retirement credits So where he's taking his Social Security benefit at age 70, thus he is receiving a higher benefit. Here in just a few moments, Jonathan's going to point out the significance of that when it comes to the survivor benefit, but you can see in this graph here, since Joe delayed and took his Social Security benefit at age 70, well, when he predeceases Jane, well, now she starts receiving the higher survivor benefit. So look at the difference between the two. In illustrations 2 and 3, her survivor benefit is now $35,712. That's about a $12,000 a year difference, or $1,000 a month difference in her survivor benefit right out of the gate. That is a dramatic, huge difference. So as Jonathan was talking about just a few moments ago, when it comes to looking at what is the right recipe or formula when optimizing your claiming strategy as a couple, as Jonathan mentioned, it's different for everybody, right? Everybody's life, everybody's financial situation is unique. If you would like us to run a specific Social Security claiming scenario for you based off your specific situation, please feel free to reach out to Jonathan or I. You can do that just by going to our website, realinvestmentadvice.com. Reach out to us. We would be more than happy to assist you with this. So just a few moments ago, Jonathan and I were both talking a little bit about survivor benefits and the importance of planning for the survivor benefit when it comes to claiming strategies for couples. Jonathan, let's spend some additional time on this. This is a really important topic.
Great, thank you, John. In case you guys have not already considered it, the chances are very high that one of you will outlive the other. Now, statistically speaking, it is women that live longer than men, and there's some important considerations when planning for that eventuality. So as John was just mentioning, the loss of a loved one, while very impactful and a difficult scenario to deal with, also comes with a few consequences. If you are currently dependent upon 2 Social Security incomes to meet your household expenses, that's going to have a drastic impact on the lifestyle of your surviving spouse. Now, some careful planning ahead of time can help alleviate that transition for the spouse that is left behind. One thing also to consider when it comes to survivor benefits is that they are independent of your own primary work record benefit. So if as a spouse you qualify for your own PIA amount, you can actually continue claiming that benefit while waiting until you reach full retirement age before claiming your survivor's benefit. Now, just like the spousal benefits we discussed earlier, there is no additional step up in earned interest credits by delaying past full retirement age. So the most advantageous time to claim your survivor benefit would be at full retirement age. For most individuals, that's going to be 67 years old. So let's look at some specifics around survivor benefits. The amount of the survivor benefit depends on 2 things. First of which is going to be the original amount of the benefit, right? That's the amount that your spouse was originally claiming. And then the second is going to be when you begin claiming your survivor benefits. So if your spouse claimed benefits early at age 62, then your survivor benefit will be based off of that earlier reduced amount. If they had delayed until age 70, taking advantage of the earned interest credits, then your survivor benefit would be based off of that delayed higher amount. Now, as I mentioned, the original benefit will be based off of when the worker claimed his benefit. So we've got Joe and Jane, they are back. Now, if Joe had waited until age 70, from what John mentioned earlier, his original amount would be a little over $2,900. If he had claimed early, it could be as low as $1,900. So that's going to have a big impact on how much is going to be left behind for Jane. Just like your spousal benefits will be reduced if you decide to claim early, your survivor benefits will also be reduced if you decide to claim early. Now, you can claim as early as age 60. Now, for individuals whose spouse passes away before they reach age 60, if they have minor children, then you will receive a survivor's benefit up until that child reaches age 16. The child will also receive survivor benefits up until they reach age 18. Once that child becomes 16, your survivor benefit stops and can be elected again once you reach at least age 60. Now, if the surviving spouse were to go into the Social Security office, they would often recommend they begin claiming those benefits as early as possible. The Social Security Administration is in the business of making sure that people get the benefits they're entitled to, but you could be missing out on opportunity if you don't take some careful planning into consideration before making that determination. Just like when you are claiming your own benefits, if you decide to claim survivor benefits early, that reduction will be locked in for the rest of your life. That can have a significant impact on the long-term amount that you'll be drawing from the system. The slide here behind me will actually demonstrate that if you have a surviving spouse benefit that was an original benefit that was claimed early, so if Joe had claimed at 62 and his benefit was $1,900, a little over each month, and then his surviving spouse Jane decided to claim at age 60, that would reduce her benefit to $1,700. If she would have waited until she was full retirement age, and assuming that Joe had delayed claiming until age 70, she'd be receiving the full $2,900. That's a difference of almost $15,000 a year in income. When you're thinking about having to make up for that gap when one spouse passes away and the surviving spouse is left with only one income stream from Social Security, that kind of difference can be instrumental in making sure that their comfort and that their standard of living is maintained throughout the remainder of their life. So let's review a few key points of survivor benefits. Now, when the original spouse passes away, their benefit will stop. Once Joe dies, his benefit stops. Now, the surviving spouse is entitled to the survivor benefit equal to the benefit amount at the time of death. So, if Joe's benefit had been inflated from cost of living adjustments, that would be the amount that Jane would be entitled to. Assuming Joe dies at age 70, that amount would be about $2,900. So if Joe dies, Jane's original amount will be equal to the benefit Joe was receiving at the time of his death. If Jane waits until full retirement age, she will receive that full amount. Once she elects to receive those survivor benefits, her own benefit will stop. Now, one thing to keep in mind that if the widower or widow's benefit is higher than the survivor benefit, then they will retain their own benefit. You get the higher of the two, but there is no double dipping. So, a couple of strategies for maximizing your survivor benefits and Social Security for the surviving spouse. The higher earning spouse should consider delaying claiming benefits until age 70. This will allow for the accumulation of earned interest credits and maximize the amount that will be left behind to the surviving spouse when the first spouse passes away. Now, the surviving spouse should file for the surviving spousal benefits at full retirement age or later. That's going to ensure that there is no reduction in the amount that they will receive by filing early, and it may make sense to claim on their own work record as early as age 62 so that you do have some income coming in, and then waiting to elect to claim the surviving spouse benefits until full retirement age. Couples really must plan for the loss of one spouse at some point. You know, like we said, it's a high likelihood that one of you is going to live longer than the other. So planning for this contingency can allow for a lessening of the impact of that transition, which is a major life event. Consider losing your spouse and the impact that that's going to have on you emotionally and mentally. Let's not add a financial impact to the mix unnecessarily. Now I'm going to turn this back over to John, who's just going to wrap up some strategies for us.
So what are some takeaways from today? I know that Jonathan and I have gone through a number of different scenarios and different rules and kind of the intricacies of Social Security and most importantly Social Security planning for couples. So what are some things that we can take away from today is when we're looking at planning for Social Security, especially when you're married and there's a significant other, you really want to make claiming decisions as a couple because what one spouse does will directly impact the other, right? We just saw this with the information that Jonathan was covering about survivor benefits. So important. Take advantage of those spousal benefits as you can. And then as Jonathan just mentioned, you really need to plan for the surviving spouse and that income stream and how will that affect them and how does that all feed into the viability of somebody's financial situation. Jonathan and I want to thank you again for spending some time with us today to learn a little bit more, not just about Social Security, but also some ideas or some things that you really need to think about when it comes to claiming decisions as a couple. So you can see that the information that we went through today, it can be confusing and it can be complex. It's very intricate. So please don't hesitate to reach out to us.
That's right, John. And as you mentioned, everyone's situation is unique and complex. If you are one of those couples that is impacted by something like a government pension offset or a windfall elimination provision, reach out to us specifically and we can talk about how that's going to impact your Social Security and how to plan for that accordingly. So on behalf of John and myself, thank you all for joining us today, and we hope to hear from you soon.